we're hearing a bunch of gunshots on 6th Street, and there's a guy, and I see him, and I see he is shooting at people indiscriminately, and then I pull out my firearm to shoot him. My mind, I know, because I've thought about these things. I'm taking these courses. I'm thinking, okay, I have to understand that if I do this, somebody might mistake me for the shooter. This episode of the Colion Noir Podcast is brought to you by Vetter Holsters. What's going on, folks? It's me, Colion Noir, for another episode of the Colion Noir Podcast, brought to you by Vetter Holsters. All right, so we are living in some interesting times today. Little did I expect for 2026 to be a whopper of a year. We just got started. We're the second month in, and everything is just going nuts. Speaking of which, I recently did a video about the shooting. I'm pretty sure at this point everybody's kind of familiar with the shooting that happened in Austin, Texas. And I did a short video about that. But I kind of wanted to explore some things regarding that whole deal, along with everything else that's going on, especially with the Iranian war that we're currently engaged in, and all of those things. So I mentioned it briefly in the video that I did on it, but I was actually in Austin the Thursday before that shooting happened in Austin. And the reason why that's of any significance is because I go to Austin a lot. I really like Austin, even though there are aspects of Austin I really don't like, but for the most part, I love Austin. And I know there are a lot of people here in Houston, Dallas, and in those areas, they don't understand why in the world I would love Austin so much, but I do. Some of my best moments, nightlife moments, have been in Austin. And so I have friends who are in the industry, when I say in the industry, meaning like on the nightlife scene kind of in Austin. And I was there to film a video about, I was actually filming a car video for my car channel. For those of you who don't know, I have a car channel that I do videos on. That is, name of the channel is Lifestyle Noir. If you want to check it out, go ahead, go over there, subscribe. I'm going to start ramping that up. I kind of use the car videos as a kind of an outlet in many ways, and because I just love cars. So basically, Lamborghini Austin gave me the keys to the Lamborghini Temerario, which is the replacement for the Huracan. They gave it to me for a few days, and I was out there filming a video. Me and Peter were out there filming a video review on the car. And I was supposed to be out there through the weekend, essentially. And I know for a fact, because of that Thursday, I was on 6th Street. I was on 6th Street that Thursday. I was on East 6th Street, but I always forget which one was East or West, but I was on East. I was on dirty 36, the part of 6th Street where everyone expects all the chaos and stuff like that to happen. So that's where I was. I was there, kind of just bouncing around to different places with some of my friends, and I know for a fact I had planned on it because I knew I'd probably be back on 6th Street after, if I'd stayed through the weekend. So that Saturday, I know for a fact I would more than likely, about an 80-90% chance I was going to be on 6th Street if I'd stayed through the weekend. All right, so I've got to give a quick shout out to Vetter Holsters. They're now sponsoring the podcast. I've been using their light tuck Kydex inside the waistband holster, and what I really like is how adjustable it is. You can tweak the ride height and cant to get it exactly how you want. Plus, they've got holsters for over 450 gun models in 75 different colors, so you can pretty much find whatever you need. But here's the thing that really sets them apart: their customer service. I've heard so many stories about how they've gone above and beyond to make sure you're happy with your holster, and with a lifetime warranty and a 30-day money-back guarantee, it's clear they stand behind their products. If you're in the market for a great holster, check them out at betterholsters.com. Now, I probably would have been on the east end. Sometimes we kind of venture off to the other side, but for the most part, that's pretty much where I probably would have been there. And I've been on 6th Street a couple of times and really wondered, like they really, I gotta give Austin PD their props. They do a really good job of maintaining what is a absolute shit show. 6th Street is a shit show. And they do a really good job of maintaining and keeping things under control. But I still always, I understand that just beneath that veneer of civility is pure chaos and could turn into pure chaos at any given moment. And so when I heard what happened in Austin and 6th Street, that kind of hit differently for me because that could have easily been in that place. And the mind quickly goes, somebody like me who's in the gun space, who talks about concealed carry, who talks about, gun-free zones. I instantly thought to myself, like, if I had been there and I had a firearm, would I even be able to protect myself in that moment? And I struggle with that because it depends. There's so many variables and so many places that it could go. If I'm inside and he's shooting from outside, you don't even know where to shoot back. So you're in that situation not knowing what's going on. Now, if you're on the street and you see him shooting, that's a different story, And so for me, it was definitely something that kind of replayed in my mind over and over and over and over again because, like I said before, I go to Austin quite a bit, and I'm on 6th Street. I'm not gonna say I'm on 6th Street quite a bit, but there's some times where I will find myself on 6th Street, and it hit because I was like, I realized again that could have easily been me. I've never been the type to really think nothing can happen to me. I've always been the opposite. I've always been opposite. That could possibly happen to me. Like when you grow up, people are like, everybody thinks that it can never happen to them. No, I was the opposite. I was like, shit, that could happen to me. Let me get ready for this shit because this shit could get real dirty. But for the most part, I hate what happened for the people who did lose their lives and the families affected by it. Like, my sincerest condolences. And it's insane to me that we are still dealing with this. And it's not from the delusional standpoint. Like, I understand why we're dealing with it. We're dealing with it because we live in reality. And unfortunately, there are evil people in this world. And some people think that the best way to express their ideology is to kill people, which makes no fucking sense to me. But nonetheless, here we are. So, it also got me thinking about something else. That got me thinking about whether or not that whole conversation about carrying a firearm while you're drinking. That's kind of the core of this podcast, because it's a conversation that has come up in private with me and some people that I know, but you never really hear it talked about in public. It's kind of like the unspoken thing you don't really want to address too loudly. Everybody does and says what's expected of them. It's oh, well, no, it's irresponsible to drink and carry a firearm. Oh, you should never drink and carry a firearm. Yada, 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 yada. Everybody says the right things when there's a camera in front of them and they're asked a question or they talk about it. And it's not that it's wrong. Like, it's clear as day that you probably shouldn't. Probably the best thing in the world, the best thing to do is not drink and carry a firearm. I mean, I think that's just kind of a given. However, there is a reality component to it, right? Whether you like it or not, you're making sacrifices. Like, there are things that you're sacrificing, right? The never carry while you're drinking sounds good on paper, but reality is totally different. And the reason why reality is totally different is because you don't know where you're going to be. Like for instance, like, you could easily be going to dinner and just having one drink, and that's it. I'm just going to go have one drink, be good. And technically speaking, you're not supposed to carry while you drink. Now, the laws are kind of different from state to state. Like, I know here in Texas, you can't be intoxicated, whatever the hell that means. Which brings me to the other point that I want to make. It's like, maybe entertaining the idea that we start treating carrying while, entertaining the idea of carrying while drinking, so to speak, or drinking or having a drink, and treat it like driving, for instance, right? Like, there's usually an alcohol blood content level that you can't be beyond if you're going to be operating a motor vehicle. Why we don't treat that the same way when it comes to carry, I don't know. Oh, yes. I mean, I don't know. I think that's something. I think it's worth having a conversation about. But the reality says this: if I drink. I'm a drinker. A lot of my friends are drinkers. A lot of people I know are drinkers. There's some of my friends who don't drink at all. So somebody who doesn't drink will hear this and say, "All right, cool. Just don't drink and then carry your firearm." But there are some people who do drink. A lot of people, and And it's a part of their socializing. And the reality is, let's say, for instance, let's say I'm going to a dinner or a restaurant. It's not like restaurants have never been shot up before. It's not like there's never been a mass shooting at a restaurant. So I'm going to want to have my gun on me, generally speaking, even if I'm at a restaurant. But if I'm going to have a drink, now I'm faced with the conundrum of, do I have a drink or do I not bring my gun? And yes, on the surface, it's an easy decision. You bring a gun and you don't drink. It's not the end of the world. It's not. I'll be the first one to admit that. But reality says this. How much of your social life are you willing to sacrifice in order to carry a firearm? And as I see it, to be able to protect yourself. And that's why I said the conversation about whether or not you should have, whether we should start treating carrying a firearm and drinking to the same degree or on the same level as cars, which is interesting because I'll be the first person to say when it comes to the Second Amendment as a whole, like comparing the car to drinking, comparing the car to the second, comparing driving, the privilege of driving to the right of owning a firearm and keeping a firearm are not the same. You can't compare the two. But in this instance, I'm making the comparison that maybe the way we treat this privilege should be the way that we treat this right. Because as far as I know, it's a lot more strict when it comes to carrying a firearm than it is to drive. At least from my understanding of things and the understanding of various laws in different places. Now, but like the vulnerability is still going to be there, right? Because when we start talking about when we start talking about, for instance, this war we have in Iran, I would be surprised. I would be utterly, absolutely surprised if we don't see an uptick, for lack of a better word, of terrorist attacks. I fully expect them to happen more regularly here in the near future. I absolutely do. Anywhere from possible bombings, car rammings, mass stabbings, mass shootings, all of it. I expect it. And I think what we saw in Austin was just a preview, which is why I implore people to probably start carrying your gun more often, more readily, because there are a lot of people who don't. I think for us here in America, we need to understand and accept that reality, considering what's going on in Iran and the wars that are happening now, because we are definitely going to see more of this. We're going to see an uptick of it. And I think the best way to combat it is to have as many actual legal gun-owning, carrying civilians out and about. And I know a lot of people will disagree with that and say, oh, we don't need more people carrying guns. I disagree. I think we do. I do think we do, because inevitably what happens is this. If the goal is to take out as many people as possible, but you know that every time you try to do this thing, you're going to be confronted by somebody else with a gun who's possibly going to stop, not even just from the standpoint of, oh, this civilian with a gun might take my life, but from the standpoint of, I'm not going to be able to enact the carnage that I really want to enact. Because even if this person doesn't kill me, I have to deal with this person with a gun. Therefore, I can't focus my attention on the easy people to kill with a gun. That's my framework and the way that I think about it. And I think in a lot of ways too, this should be a conversation that's had on a national level. It befuddles me in a way that we don't have a national conversation about concealed carry, civilians carrying guns, and possibly dealing with terrorist threats. And the reason why I say that is because there's so many people out here who carry firearms and may possibly be put in a situation where they may need to put down a mass shooter or a bad guy of some sort and not factor in the fact that somebody might confuse you for being a shooter too. It is a very complex and dynamic situation when you start talking about using your firearm in a mass shooting situation to take out the shooter. Right, because that's another dynamic. For instance, like if we're hearing a bunch of gunshots on 6th Street, and there's a guy, and I see him, and I see he is shooting at people indiscriminately, and then I pull out my firearm to shoot him. My mind, I know, because I've thought about these things. I'm taking these courses. I'm thinking, okay, I have to understand that if I do this, somebody might mistake me for the shooter. right? So there's a different approach and tactic that comes into play with respect to how you deal with that situation. And it's all going to be dependent on the circumstances, right? Maybe you don't pull out your gun and start running towards them and start shooting. Maybe you close the distance, you close the gap to get a shot off, and then you draw. Because at the end of the day, in the midst of the chaos, not everybody knows who's who. Then you might have police arrive, and they arrived on the scene within minutes, right? Not minutes, but a minute, less than a minute, which is incredible. I think people thought I was downplaying that in my video. No, that response time was insane, and they deserve every applaud they possibly can get from that, because that saved a shit ton of lives. But at the same time, there's no national conversation about people carrying guns and understanding how do we create this distinction between who's the bad guy, who's not the bad guy. Now, the anti-gun side would say, well, nobody should have a gun, and we always know who's the person who's the bad guy and who's the good guy. No, that's not how this works. All that does is, again, it creates more victims for these types of things to happen. But a lot of people don't even think about that. And we may find ourselves in a situation where somebody pulls his gun out to stop a mass shooter, and then they get confused because they've done it in a way without thinking about the fact that how they're being presented to everyone else, right? So those are things that I think that people really honestly should be thinking about. And honestly, we should be having a conversation about that on a national level. But going back to what I was saying about choosing between having a social life and carrying a firearm, and when it comes to drinking, all I'm saying is, I don't know. It is. I know the right thing to say, but I also know I know people who carry 100% no matter what they're doing, where they go. They carry 100%. They don't obey gun-free zones. When they go out to drink, when they go to places, they're carrying a gun. And I can't really honestly be mad at them. Probably not the most responsible thing to do, but I understand the mentality. I do. And I'd be lying to you if I said I didn't. And so for me, when I see that, it's like nobody really talks about it, because it is a very difficult conversation. If I'm going from bar to bar and I still have to walk back to my car, I have to walk to the bar. Those are all, and everybody knows that if something's going to happen, it's always going to be a place of transition, right? And I many a times made the decision. I'm going out for the night. And I'm like, okay, do I Uber? Do I drive? If I Uber and I have a gun on me and I go somewhere and like, it's just, if I'm going to have a drink, like it's all of these things come into play. And it's a lot of logistics that people don't really think about. But they're there. And so I struggle with this immensely, because I know people who I absolutely trust. They could be drunk as hell, and I trust them with a gun. I do. There are people I know like that. And then there are people I know who I don't trust them with a gun if they were stone cold sober. So there's that, right? So there's those two different dynamics, and I think that people need to be a little more realistic about this conversation, because I don't think people are being really honest. In the sense of just saying it's irresponsible to carry while you're drinking. But at the same time, I get why it's said, because in a lot of ways I agree with it. Like it's irresponsible to get drunk and then carry a gun. I don't think you should be flat out drunk or blackout drunk and carrying a firearm. But I wonder if there's a lane that can be created where it's like, carrying a gun and having a drink isn't instantly wrong. Carrying a gun and being drunk is. And I don't think it's that hard of a line to make, me personally. Now, there could be some people that disagree with me, and I get it, because, again, like I said, it is a complex topic. And so, which way do you weigh it? Which way do you go? Like even here in Texas, right? you have what they call the 51%. The 51% is anytime you go to a place or any establishment that makes 51% of its revenue from selling alcohol, you cannot carry a firearm in there whatsoever. You can't. It doesn't matter if you're going in there to drink or not drink. You cannot carry a firearm. And then, from state to state, the laws are kind of different. Every state kind of approaches it and treats it differently. But I will say, I do believe that if you are going into a bar or restaurant and you're not planning on having a drink, I think it's perfectly fine to carry. I'll say that much. I think it's perfectly fine. You should be allowed. You should be allowed to carry. I've been in situations where I knew I was going to drink. I was with a friend who wasn't going to drink, and I said, I won't carry. I know they're carrying because they're not planning on drinking. Now, that establishment wasn't a 51 establishment. We're going to a restaurant, but I knew I'd be drinking. And so they didn't carry. Well, I didn't carry, and they carried. But I do think that the laws when it comes to carrying while you're drinking or planning to drink, I think they need to be a little more specific. And I think we need to be a little more specific in the community about how we approach those things. Or maybe not. Or maybe it just makes sense to say, don't carry while you drink. Don't carry while you drink. And just leave it at that. Maybe that's really just the way it should be. But I do know that starts to infringe on people's social lifestyles quite a bit if they decide to do that. It just makes things rather difficult from the standpoint of being vigilant about carrying a firearm when you're somebody who does have. Some people don't leave their house. Some people never go out. And so I'm probably speaking to a minority of people who still kind of just go out and have a social life. But it's an interesting topic for me because I haven't really rectified it with myself. I don't know where that line should be, or if that line should exist at all. It's a gray area for me, truth be told. And my brain always wants to immediately seize the negative, the inherent negative. It's just make it wholesale. Now, don't have to. We've seen so many times people get drunk, they become belligerent and violent, and then they grab a gun and they do stupid shit with it. I've seen there's plenty of videos to prove it. But there are also people who drink and get really chill. But then there's also that aspect of it where it's like, well, how well of a shooter are you actually going to be if you are intoxicated? But then what is intoxicated? I don't know. You guys tell me, is that something that is a gray area for you, or is it just a hard line? Is it just a hard line of, you either carry or you drink? There's no back and forth. There is no trying to figure out like, I'm only gonna have one drink. I'm only gonna have two drinks. And another thing too is, that was an area like in Austin. Clearly, all of those bars are 51% bars, meaning you can't carry a gun in there to begin with. But I did see a lot of people who, they were kind of, I guess, cracking jokes to an extent. They were saying things like, "Oh, well, it's Texas. How come nobody had a gun? How come nobody had a gun?" Yeah. First of all, it's Austin. Austin is like California light. The mentality there isn't, like, people don't understand that when it comes to concealed carry, it is very much driven by the type of culture there is. Though you can have all the lax gun laws you want, but if there's no culture for it, most people aren't doing it. Like, a lot of people have concealed carry licenses and don't carry. And in Austin, it's not really known to be a concealed carry city. It's very different from, like, say, Dallas or Houston. In Houston and Dallas, everybody carries. I don't say everybody, but a lot of people carry. A lot. In Austin, not so much. It's just the culture is different there. It leans a lot further left, and those people don't. And a lot of people on the left don't like guns, much less carry them. So when people start asking the question, "Oh, why wasn't there anybody there with a gun?" Well, because it's Austin. That's why. And not many people carry. Had that happened here in Dallas, maybe a different story. But there is no, like, 6th Street equivalent here in Dallas, as far as I know. But I like I said, I struggle with this quite a bit. And from the when it comes up, it's not something I like go to sleep and ponder about all the time. But when this happened, and I thought about how could somebody in that situation be able to defend themselves because they're in a bar, they're not allowed to carry in the first place. It is a college crowd, so you really don't want college kids with guns in there drinking and having firearms on them, things that could just go south quickly. I'm very readily apparent about that. Like I'm aware of that to the umpteenth degree. But at the same time, life doesn't stop for anyone, right? There have been plenty of stories of people going back to their cars, walking back to their location, and being robbed and being killed and being accosted, all of those things. And so these are things that if you have a social life and a dynamically social life that you have to think about if you're somebody that carries a gun. And now considering everything that's going on, and I truly believe that there's going to be an uptick in terrorist attacks, we've got to be even more vigilant. You got to be even more consistent with carrying your firearm, I believe, because we're going to have to deal with this whether we like it or not. Right? Like I have people who have told me about how they know people who work the border and they have scores of fighting age men coming into the country unabated, and they can only stop so many of them. And a lot of them were Iranian. So, and that's what Iran does. That's terrorism is their thing. They fund it more than anybody else. So to think that they don't have pockets of people here in this country ready to do just that, you'd be lying to yourself. You really would, because that's what they do. So I leave y'all with this question. What do y'all think? Let me know in the comment section. I want to know. Do you think we should start treating guns when it comes to carrying and drinking the same way they treat drinking and driving? Or do you think, no, there's no middle ground. There's no question. It's out of the question. I'm torn. I'm torn. Again, because like I said, I know people who I trust vehemently with a firearm while they're drinking. Then there are people who I don't trust at all when they're sober. And I don't like the idea of having to disarm yourself simply because you want to be social. I think it's an unrealistic ask, personally. But there's some people who disagree. Some people say you be a hermit, you live inside, you don't go out, you don't do anything. You don't go, you don't socialize, and yeah, that's fine. But not everybody lives like that. And maybe that's just a sacrifice that you have to make when it comes to having a more dynamically social life. Maybe that's just it. You have to risk, and I know this because I've done it many a times. You just have to risk being unarmed and going out. I've gone out places and people have recognized me and they're like, "What do you got on you?" I was like, "Nothing. I can't carry here." The funny thing is they look at me shocked. They're like, "Wait, what?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'd be headline news if I ever got caught. So maybe I have to be more vigilant about that than most people, but yeah, like it's a decision I've had to make, and I've had to walk to certain places, and then knowing I was gonna be drinking, and then I knew I would have to walk back to where I was going, and I wouldn't have a gun on me. That's just kind of what it is. Now I carry on me 99.9% of the time, but life. So let me know what you think in the comment section. That was another episode of Colion Noir Podcast. Me just telling you my thoughts and understandings. Things are really busy right now. I've got a lot going on. A lot. I hope I don't burn out. Yeah, I probably won't.